I was sitting in the financial aid office when my entire world shattered. 3 months from graduation, and the advisor was telling me my college fund showed a zero balance. My mother had withdrawn everything 6 months ago. My phone started buzzing with collection agency calls, bills in my name, thousands of dollars I never authorized, all for my stepsister Brianna's cosmetic procedures and luxury purchases. My mother had been forging my signature. Graduation was impossible now. Everything I'd worked for was gone. I left that office in a daze, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip my steering wheel. The 3-hour drive home felt like an out-of-body experience. My mind kept circling back to that zero balance, those bills, those collection calls. $47,000. That number kept echoing in my head, like a death sentence. My father had set up that college fund before he died when I was 15. He'd worked double shifts as an engineer, saved every penny he could, also I could go to college without drowning in debt like he had. He'd made my mother promise to protect it, to keep it safe for me, and she'd stolen every cent. The house came into view as I turned onto Maple Drive, and my stomach twisted. It was my father's house, the one he'd bought with his own money, the home where I'd grown up. Now my mother lived there with her second husband Frank and his daughter Brianna. The pool my father had installed sparkled in the afternoon sun, and I could hear music and laughter from the backyard. A pool party, of course. I parked on the street and walked around to the back gate. The yard was full of people I vaguely recognized, neighbors and friends of my mother and Frank. Brianna held court by the pool in a designer bikini, her new nose prominently displayed as she posed for photos. Her lips looked different too, fuller. And her chest was noticeably larger than the last time I'd seen her at Christmas. My college fund had paid for all of it. Carol, my mother, lounged on a deck chair in oversized sunglasses, a cocktail in her hand. She looked relaxed, happy, not a care in the world. Frank stood by the grill, holding court with some other men, probably talking about golf or stocks or whatever successful lawyers talked about at pool parties. I walked straight up to my mother, my heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Carol. I never called her mom anymore. Not since she'd remarried and made it clear that Brianna was her priority now. We need to talk. Now. She looked up slowly, her expression shifting from relaxed to annoyed. Ashlynn, what are you doing here? I thought you had finals. My college fund is empty. Every penny is gone. And I've got bills in my name for things I never bought. My voice was shaking, but I pushed forward. You took my money. You forged my signature. The conversations around us started to quiet. People were listening now. Carol stood up, removing her sunglasses with theatrical slowness. Ashlynn, honey, you're confused. You authorized me to access that account. Don't you remember? You were so stressed with school, and you asked me to help manage things. That's a lie. I never gave you permission to touch that money. Dad left it for me. For my education. Frank had put down his grill tongs and was walking over now, his lawyer face on. That expression that said he was about to destroy someone in the most professional way possible. Ashlynn, let's not make a scene, he said smoothly. If there's been some confusion about the account, we can discuss it rationally. But accusing your mother of theft in front of her guests is inappropriate and, frankly, actionable. Actionable? I stared at him. You want to threaten me? When she stole my college fund, Carol pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward me. See? These are the authorization forms you signed. Your signature, right there. You gave me access to help manage the account while you were busy with school. I looked at the documents on her phone. They did have my signature, or something that looked very close to my signature. Close enough that if you didn't know better, you'd believe it was real. Those are forged, I said, my voice rising. I never signed anything like that. Brianna had joined us now, drinks in hand for herself and her friends, a smirk playing on her artificially plumped lips. Oh my God, Ashlynn, are you seriously trying to claim you didn't know about the money? Mom told me you were totally fine with helping family. You said the money was basically wasted on you anyway, since you were just going to get some boring job. The crowd around us had grown. Everyone was watching now, and I could see the judgment in their eyes. The crazy daughter making accusations. The ungrateful child. That's not true. None of this is true. I turned back to Carol. The bills, Carol. Bills for Brianna's cosmetic work. Her apartment deposit, her car payments, all in my name. How do you explain that? Carol's expression shifted, something cold and calculating sliding behind her eyes. Ashlynn, you're not well. The stress of school has clearly gotten to you. Frank, maybe we should call someone. She seems to be having some kind of breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown. I'm being robbed. By my own mother. Frank stepped closer, his voice dropping low enough that only I could hear. Listen carefully, Ashlynn. Those documents are legally notarized. I have a notary colleague who will swear under oath that you brought proper identification and signed them yourself. We have emails from your account asking Carol to handle your finances. We have text messages. We have a paper trail that proves you knew exactly what was happening and consented to all of it. My blood went cold. You fabricated all of that. Prove it, he said simply. And before you try, you should know that if you go to the police with these accusations, I'll file charges against you for defamation, harassment, and filing a false police report. I'm a lawyer with a spotless reputation. You're a college student drowning in debt. By your own choices, I might add. Trying to blame your family for your poor financial decisions. I looked at Carol, really looked at her, and saw the truth in her eyes. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a mistake. This was planned, calculated. She'd been setting this trap for months, maybe longer. Why? I whispered. Dad left that money for me. He trusted you. Carol leaned in close. Your father left me nothing but debt and this house. He spent everything on you. Always you. His precious daughter. Well, now I have a daughter too, and she deserves nice things. You can handle a little debt. You're smart, aren't you? That's what everyone always said. Smart, Ashlynn. You'll figure it out. Brianna laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Honestly, the money looks way better on me than it ever would have on you. I mean, look at this nose. Total game changer. I felt tears burning my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these people. If I go to the police, I said to Frank, what happens? I destroy you, he said matter-of-factly. Legally, financially, socially. I've been practicing law for 23 years. I know exactly how to make you look unstable, dishonest, and desperate. By the time I'm done, you won't be able to rent an apartment or get a job flipping burgers. Your choice. I looked around at the faces watching us. Neighbors who'd known me since I was a child. Friends of my father. Not one of them was coming to my defense. They all looked uncomfortable, embarrassed, like I was the one causing problems. I walked away without another word. What else could I do? I got in my car and drove back to campus, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Carol's words echoing in my head. By the time I got back to my apartment, the reality had fully sunk in. I pulled up my credit report on my laptop, and the numbers made me sick. $47,000 in debt, credit cards I'd never opened, loans I'd never taken, store accounts at places I'd never shopped, all in my name, all my responsibility. My phone started ringing. Collection agencies. They'd been calling all day. And now I understood why. These weren't mistakes or fraud to them. These were legitimate debts in my name, with signatures and authorization and everything needed to make them legal. I was trapped. Absolutely, completely trapped. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a desperate hope that maybe yesterday had been a nightmare. But my phone showed 17 missed calls from creditors, and my email was full of overdue payment notices. It was real. All horrifyingly real. I got dressed and drove to the police station. Because what else could I do? Give up? Let Carol and Frank destroy my entire future? My father wouldn't have wanted that. He'd taught me to stand up for myself, to fight for what was right. The Riverside Police Department was a low, brick building that always looked tired. I'd been there once before on a school field trip in 6th grade. It had seemed exciting then. Now it just felt intimidating. Detective Harris was in his mid-40s, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He listened to my story, taking notes, nodding in the right places. He seemed sympathetic, which gave me a spark of hope. Identity theft is serious, he said when I finished. And if your mother forged your signature, that's fraud. Let me start an investigation. I'll need copies of everything you have, bank statements, bills, anything that shows the unauthorized charges. I spent 2 hours at the station, printing documents from my email, showing him my credit report, explaining the timeline. Detective Harris promised he'd look into it and get back to me within a few days. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I kept my phone on constantly, jumping every time it rang. I couldn't focus on my finals. I couldn't eat. I just waited. When Detective Harris finally called, his tone was different. More formal. Less sympathetic. Miss Parker, I need you to come down to the station. We have some developments in your case. I drove there with my stomach in knots, hoping developments meant good news. Maybe they'd found proof of the forgery. Maybe Carol had confessed. But when I walked into Detective Harris's office, Frank was sitting there in an expensive suit, a briefcase on his lap, looking like he owned the place. Ashlynn, Detective Harris said, gesturing to a chair. Please sit down. Mr. Stevens has provided some information that complicates your case significantly. Frank smiled at me. It didn't reach his eyes. Hello, Ashlynn. I'm sorry it's come to this, but you've left me no choice. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. Detective, these are notarized forms, showing that Ashlynn gave her mother full financial power of attorney last June. Here's the notary seal, the witness signatures, everything legal and binding. That's forged, I said immediately. The notary is willing to testify otherwise. Her name is Patricia Hughes, and she's been a licensed notary for 15 years. She remembers you specifically because you seemed nervous about giving your mother so much control, but you insisted it was necessary because you were overwhelmed with school. Detective Harris was reading the documents, his expression troubled. Frank continued. Additionally, we have emails from Ashlynn's account, asking Carol to handle various financial matters. Here's one from July, where she specifically asks her mother to help with some purchases. And here are text messages from August confirming she knew about the credit cards. I never sent those, I protested. Someone hacked my account, or used my password. Your password that only you knew? Frank raised an eyebrow. Detective, I think what we have here is a young woman who made some financial decisions she now regrets, and is trying to blame her family to avoid responsibility. That's not what happened. Frank pulled out more papers. This is particularly troubling, Detective. Yesterday, Ashlynn came to my home and made these accusations in front of dozens of witnesses. She was erratic, aggressive, and made threats. Several guests have given statements about her concerning behavior. I'm worried about her mental state. I wasn't erratic. I was upset because my college fund was stolen. A college fund you authorized your mother to manage, Frank said smoothly. Look, I understand. College is stressful. Financial pressure is real. But making false accusations against your own family? That crosses a line. Detective Harris looked at me, and I could see doubt creeping into his expression. Miss Parker, these documents look legitimate. And if Mr. Stevens's colleagues are willing to testify about the notarization and the authorization, this becomes a lot more complicated than simple identity theft. He's lying. They're all lying. This is a setup. Frank sighed like I was a troublesome child. Detective, I hate to do this, but I need to protect my family. I'm filing a formal complaint against Ashlynn for defamation, harassment, and filing a false police report. Her accusations are damaging my wife's reputation and causing significant emotional distress. My heart stopped. You're charging me? I don't want to, Frank said, managing to sound regretful. But you're not giving me a choice. Either you retract these accusations and accept responsibility for your debts, or I'll have to pursue legal action to protect my family's good name. Detective Harris set down the papers. Miss Parker, I'm going to continue investigating, but I have to be honest with you. Right now, this looks like a civil dispute more than a criminal matter. The documentation Mr. Stevens has provided suggests you did give your mother authorization. Without clear proof of forgery, I can't move forward with charges against her. But what about my college fund? What about the fact that I can't graduate now? That's between you and your family. I'm sorry, but unless you can prove these signatures are forged and these emails are fabricated, my hands are tied. I looked at Frank, and he looked back at me with cold satisfaction. He'd won. He'd walked into this police station and dismantled my entire case in 20 minutes. "One more thing," Frank said, standing up. "Ashlynn, if you continue making these accusations publicly, I will sue you for defamation." "Is that clear?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He left, and I sat there with Detective Harris, feeling my world crumble even further. "I'm not lying," I said quietly. "I know how this looks, but I'm telling the truth." "Then you need to find proof," Detective Harris said, not unkindly. "Real proof. Bank security footage. Handwriting analysis. Something concrete. Without it, this is just your word against theirs, and they have documentation backing up their version." I drove back to campus in a fog. When I got to my apartment, there was an official-looking letter taped to my door. From the university. My hands shook as I opened it. Due to the fraud flags on my account and the outstanding balance on my tuition, my enrollment was suspended effective immediately. I could not attend classes, take finals, or graduate until the matter was resolved. My scholarships were revoked pending investigation. 4 years of work. 4 years of late nights studying. Perfect attendance. Dean's list every semester. Gone. Because my mother decided she deserved my college fund more than I did. I called my academic advisor, Professor Morgan, hoping she could help. She'd always been supportive, always encouraged me to pursue graduate school. But even her voice was different now. "Ashlynn, I heard about the situation. The administration is taking this very seriously. Fraud allegations reflect poorly on the university. Until you can prove your innocence, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do. Professor, I didn't commit fraud. I'm the victim here. I want to believe you. But the evidence suggests otherwise." "I'm sorry." She hung up. Another door closed. My roommate came home and found me sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by bills and bank statements, trying to find something, anything that could prove my case. "Ashlynn, people are talking," she said uncomfortably, "about the fraud stuff. And the police. Is it true? Is what true? That you took out all those credit cards and now you're trying to blame your mom?" "No, that's not what happened." But she looked at me the way everyone was looking at me now, like I was a liar, like I was the problem. That night, I got a text from Carol. Just 3 words and a file attachment. "Sign these papers." I opened the attachment. It was a legal document, stating that I had knowingly and willingly authorized all the charges, that I accepted full financial responsibility, and that I would not pursue legal action against any member of my family. If I signed, I was admitting to $47,000 in debt that would take me decades to pay off. If I didn't sign, Frank would file charges, and I'd have a criminal record. I was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. 2 weeks crawled by. 2 weeks of constant phone calls from creditors. 2 weeks of watching my classmates take their finals while I sat suspended. 2 weeks of feeling my entire life unravel. I picked up extra shifts at the restaurant where I worked evenings, trying to make enough to cover rent and food. My coffee shop morning job had been my steady income, good tips, flexible schedule. I'd been there for 2 years, and my manager had been talking about promoting me to shift supervisor, until the background check came through. "Ashlynn, can we talk in my office?" Maria, my manager, looked uncomfortable. She'd always been kind to me, almost motherly. Now she couldn't meet my eyes. I followed her to the tiny office behind the storeroom, my stomach already sinking. "I got the results of your background check for the promotion," Maria said, sitting down heavily. "There are some flags. Fraud investigation. Identity theft allegations. Police involvement. Maria, I'm the victim in all of this. My mother stole my identity. I believe you might think that," she said carefully. "But corporate has a policy. We can't have anyone under investigation for financial crimes in a supervisory position, or any position, really, where they handle money. Are you firing me?" She nodded slowly. "I'm so sorry. If it was up to me, but it's not. Corporate is very strict about this kind of thing." I walked out of that coffee shop for the last time, my apron balled up in my hands, trying not to cry in front of the customers. Half my income, gone. Just like that. The restaurant shifts barely covered my rent. I started eating rice and beans for every meal, the cheapest food I could find. I sold my laptop, my tablet, anything of value. I was bleeding money I didn't have, drowning in debt I didn't create. Then Tyler started pulling away. We'd been dating for 8 months, and I thought it was serious. He was pre-med, smart, funny, came from a good family. His parents had seemed to like me at Thanksgiving, but now when I called, he was always busy. When I suggested getting together, he had studying to do. Finally, I cornered him after one of his classes. Tyler, what's going on? Are we okay? He shifted his backpack, not looking at me. Ashlynn, I heard things about you and the fraud stuff. I'm the victim, not the criminal. Someone stole my identity. Yeah, but people are saying you're trying to avoid debts you actually took on, that you're lying about your mom to get out of paying. People? What people? My parents. He finally met my eyes. They heard about it somehow. They told me I need to be careful about who I associate with. That this kind of thing could hurt my med school applications. So you're breaking up with me because your parents told you to? It's not just that. Ashlynn, you've been different lately. Stressed, angry, always talking about this situation. I can't handle the drama right now. I have MCATs coming up. Drama? My voice rose. My mother stole my college fund and destroyed my credit. That's not drama, Tyler. That's a crime. If it's really a crime, why aren't the police doing anything? He adjusted his backpack again, already stepping away. Look, I'm sorry, but I can't be with someone who's involved in all this. It's too much. He walked away, and I stood there in the middle of campus, watching him disappear into the crowd of students. Students who were going to graduate. Students who had families that supported them. Students whose mothers hadn't destroyed their entire futures. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. That evening, I was walking back to my apartment when I saw Carol's car parked outside. My stomach dropped. She was sitting on my front steps, dressed immaculately as always, her designer purse resting beside her. We need to talk, she said, standing up. I have nothing to say to you. Then you can listen. She followed me to my door. I thought about not letting her in, but what was the point? She'd already taken everything else. My apartment was tiny, shabby, nothing like the house she lived in. My house, technically. My father's house. She looked around with barely concealed disdain. Living the dream, I see, she said, settling onto my second-hand couch. What do you want, Carol? She pulled out more bills from her purse. Thick envelopes, all with my name on them. Brianna's car payment is late, and her apartment complex is asking for another deposit. Plus, she needs money for some new furniture she ordered. I thought you should know. I'm not paying for Brianna's anything. Actually, you are. These are all in your name. If they don't get paid, it damages your credit further, which is already, shall we say, problematic. She set the bills on my coffee table like she was laying out cards in a game she was winning. Why are you doing this? I asked. What did I ever do to you? Carol's expression changed, something ugly and honest sliding across her face. You want the truth? Your father chose you over me every single day of our marriage. It was always Ashlynn this, Ashlynn that. Ashlynn needs dance lessons. Ashlynn needs a new bike. Ashlynn wants to go to science camp. Do you know how that felt? Watching my husband spend every penny on another woman's daughter? I was his daughter. And I was his wife. But that didn't matter, did it? Everything went to you. Even after he died, it was still about you. This college fund, this trust. Make sure Ashlynn's taken care of. What about me? What about Brianna? Dad left you the house and his life insurance. The life insurance went to pay off his debts that you didn't even know about. He spent everything on you and left me with nothing but a mortgage and bills. So yes, Ashlynn, I'm taking what should have been mine from the beginning. Call it repayment. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I'm giving you one more chance to make this easy. Come work for us. Live in the house. Help out with cooking, cleaning, running errands, minimum wage, and it goes toward paying off these debts. In 15 or 20 years, you'll be clear. 15 years? Unless you can find a better option. But with your credit and no degree, Good luck finding any job that pays more than minimum wage. She walked to the door, then turned back. Oh. And Frank wanted me to remind you that if you go to the police again, or try to make any more accusations, he'll file those criminal charges. You could end up in jail, Ashlynn. Is your pride worth that? After she left, I sat on my couch staring at those bills until the room got dark, and my phone started ringing again with creditors. I was so tired, so completely exhausted. For the first time, I seriously considered just giving up. Signing the papers, accepting the debt, working for Carol until I was 40 years old and broken. What other choice did I have? But then I remembered my father's voice. We'd been in his workshop when I was 12, and I'd been crying about something, some problem at school that seemed overwhelming. Ashlynn, he'd said, putting down his tools and kneeling to my eye level. Life's going to throw hard things at you, really hard things. And sometimes people you trust will hurt you, but here's what you need to remember. You're stronger than you know, and when someone tries to break you, you don't let them see it work. You stand up, you fight back, and you show them exactly what you're made of. I wasn't 12 anymore, and this was so much worse than a school problem, but somewhere deep inside, beneath the exhaustion and fear and despair, there was still a spark of that stubborn 12-year-old who'd refused to let the school bully win. I wasn't done fighting yet. 3 weeks later, I was barely surviving. The restaurant had cut my hours because business was slow, and I couldn't find another job. Every application I submitted came back with a polite rejection. The background checks always showed the fraud flags. I was living on ramen noodles and the cheapest bread I could find. I'd lost 12 pounds, couldn't sleep more than a few hours at a time, and had constant headaches from stress and malnutrition. My landlord had taped eviction notices to my door 3 times. I owed 3 months of rent and had no idea how to pay it. The worst part was the loneliness. My friends had all pulled away, either believing Carol's version of events or not wanting to be associated with someone under investigation. My phone rarely rang anymore except for creditors, and I'd stopped answering those calls because there was nothing I could tell them. On a Thursday night in late April, I was working the dinner rush at the restaurant, carrying a heavy tray of plates to a table of 6. The room tilted suddenly. I remember thinking that was strange, that the floor shouldn't be moving. Then everything went black. I woke up in an emergency room, fluorescent lights too bright, a steady beeping sound nearby. A nurse was checking my blood pressure. "Welcome back," she said. "You gave everyone quite a scare. When did you last eat a proper meal?" "I don't know. A while." A doctor came in, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes. "Miss Parker, you collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition. Your blood sugar was dangerously low, you're dehydrated, and your vitals suggest you haven't been sleeping. When did this start?" "About a month ago." She pulled up a chair. "I'm going to be direct with you. You need rest, proper nutrition, and significantly less stress. Your body is shutting down. If you continue like this, you're looking at serious health consequences, heart problems, organ damage, potentially worse. I can't afford rest. I can't afford proper nutrition. I have to work. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to work at all." She made some notes on her tablet. "I'm recommending 2 weeks of rest and writing you a prescription for high-calorie supplements. Do you have insurance?" "No. I lost it when I got suspended from school." Her expression softened. "I'll see what I can do about the bill. But Ashlynn, you need to find a way to reduce your stress levels. Whatever's happening in your life, it's literally killing you." They kept me for observation for 6 hours, pumped me full of fluids and gave me some food. Then they discharged me with papers I couldn't afford to pay and instructions I couldn't afford to follow. I called a taxi to get back to my apartment because I was too weak to walk, another expense I couldn't handle. When we pulled up, there was a bright orange notice on my door. Final eviction notice. I had 1 week to pay or leave. I sat down on my front steps and tried to calculate how much money I had. $73 in my bank account. The rent was $1,200. The medical bills would probably be thousands. I owed $47,000 in credit card debt I didn't create. Even if I worked every possible hour, I couldn't catch up. The math didn't work. My phone buzzed. A text from Carol. "Heard you fainted at work. The offer still stands. Come work for us, and you'll at least have a place to live and food to eat. Think about it." She knew. Somehow, she already knew about the hospital. Was she having me followed? Or had someone at the restaurant called her? Another text came through, this one with a photo. It was Brianna in my apartment, or what used to be my apartment, taking selfies. The caption read, "When you don't manage money wisely, you lose everything. Don't be like my stepsister." She'd posted it to social media. I grabbed my phone and checked. Sure enough, there was Brianna's post with photos of my tiny apartment, my empty fridge, my stack of bills on the counter. 1,700 likes already. Comments rolling in. Yikes, learn to budget. This is so sad. Is this the girl who accused her mom of fraud? Sounds like she's just bad with money. Mess. Brianna had made me into a cautionary tale, a joke, entertainment for her followers. And people were eating it up, believing it, spreading it. My humiliation was going viral. I sat on those steps until it got dark, watching cars go by, watching normal people live their normal lives, people with families who loved them, people with futures. Carol's job offer sat in my mind like a trap with its jaws open. 15 years of servitude, 15 years of being Carol and Brianna's personal assistant, their maid, their punching bag. But I'd have a place to live and food to eat. I wouldn't be homeless, but I'd also be exactly where Carol wanted me. Broken. Dependent. Defeated. My father's voice echoed in my memory again. You stand up, you fight back, and you show them exactly what you're made of. But how? How do you fight when you have no weapons, no resources, no allies? How do you stand up when you can barely stand at all? I went inside and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked terrible. Thin, pale, dark circles under my eyes. I barely recognized myself, but beneath the exhaustion, beneath the fear, there was still something. A tiny spark of anger, of defiance, of pure, stubborn refusal to let Carol win. I had 1 week before eviction, 1 week to find a way out of this nightmare, 1 week to decide if I was going to fight or surrender. I chose to fight. The next morning I swallowed my pride and called Carol. I'll take the job. Smart girl. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. Pack your things. Frank will pick you up this afternoon. 3 hours later, Frank arrived in his BMW. He didn't help me carry my boxes. Just watched as I loaded my pathetic collection of belongings into his trunk, then drove in silence to the house. My house. My father's house. Carol was waiting at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Welcome home, Ashlynn. She led me through the house I'd grown up in, past the living room where Dad and I used to watch movies, past the kitchen where he'd taught me to make pancakes, down the stairs to the basement. It had been finished when I was a kid, used as a playroom and guest space. Now it was clearly just storage. This is your room, Carol said, opening a door at the far end. It was tiny. A single bed, a small dresser, one window high up near the ceiling that barely let in light. Nothing like the bedroom I'd had upstairs, the one Brianna now occupied. There's a bathroom down the hall. House rules are posted on the fridge. You'll start work tomorrow morning at 6. Any questions? What exactly will I be doing? Cooking, cleaning, laundry, errands, whatever we need. Minimum wage, $200 a week, minus room and board, leaves you with about $50 that goes directly toward your debts. At this rate, you should be clear in approximately 14 years. 14 years. I'd be 41 years old. Carol left me to unpack, which took about 10 minutes since I owned so little. Then I went upstairs to look at the house rules posted on the refrigerator. There were 17 rules. Wake up at 5:30. No guests. No phone calls during work hours. Dinner must be ready by 6. Kitchen must be cleaned by 9. No using the main living spaces when guests are present. On and on. The last rule made my stomach turn. Ashlynn will wear the provided uniform when working. The uniform was a gray dress with a white apron, a maid's outfit. Carol was going to make me serve my own family, dressed like hired help in my father's house. That first week was the hardest week of my life, and that was saying something considering the previous month. I cooked breakfast for Carol, Frank, and Brianna. I cleaned their bathrooms, washed their clothes, scrubbed their floors. When Carol had friends over, I served drinks and appetizers while they talked about me like I wasn't there. Such a shame about Ashlynn, one of Carol's friends said. She had so much potential. Well, poor choices lead to poor outcomes, Carol replied smoothly. We're trying to help her get back on her feet. Brianna loved having me as her personal servant. She'd leave her room a disaster just to watch me clean it. She'd call me upstairs to bring her water when she was perfectly capable of getting it herself. She'd post videos on social media with me in the background, cleaning, serving, being humiliated, and her followers ate it up. But I kept my head down and did the work, because while I was cleaning their house, I was also learning their patterns, their habits, their secrets. Frank's office was on the first floor, and he left it unlocked during the day. When I was alone in the house, I started looking through his things. Nothing too obvious at first, just checking desk drawers when I dusted, glancing at papers when I emptied the trash. That's when I found the first file, hidden in the back of his filing cabinet, behind legitimate case files, documents showing Carol's financial history before she married my father. And it was interesting, very interesting. Carol had been married twice before my dad. Both husbands had died. Both had left everything to Carol. Both had children from previous marriages who were cut out of the inheritance. She had a pattern. Marry widowers with money and kids. Isolate the man from his children. Inherit everything. Move on. My dad had been number 3. I took photos with my phone, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold it steady. This was proof. Proof that Carol was a con artist. That she'd targeted my father specifically for his money and his house. But I needed more. I needed proof of the forgery. Proof that she'd stolen my college fund. Proof that would actually hold up in court. I kept searching. Late at night, after Carol and Frank went to bed, I'd sneak upstairs and spend hours in Frank's office, going through every file, every document, every scrap of paper. 2 weeks in, I found what I was looking for. A file labeled Parker Estate, tucked behind Frank's law degree on the wall. Inside were the original power of attorney documents, the ones with my forged signature. But there was also something else. Notes in Frank's handwriting, detailing exactly how they'd created the forgeries, which notary they'd bribed, how much they'd paid her. $3,000 to Patricia Hughes to lie under oath. It was all there. I took photos of everything, my heart racing so fast I thought I might pass out. This was it. This was the evidence I needed. But as I was putting the file back, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Frank. Coming down. I shoved the file back in place, closed the cabinet, and tried to look busy dusting his desk. But he knew. The second he walked in and saw me there, he knew. What are you doing in my office? Cleaning. Carol asked me to dust in here. He looked at the desk, at the filing cabinet, at me. His expression shifted from sleepy confusion to sharp alertness. It's 1 a.m. Carol didn't ask you to clean now. My phone was in my apron pocket, full of incriminating photos. If he searched me, if he found them, I was done. I couldn't sleep. I thought I'd get ahead on tomorrow's chores. Frank walked over to his filing cabinet and checked it. The lock was still secure. I'd been careful. But he wasn't convinced. Go back to your room. Now. I walked past him, trying to keep my breathing steady, trying not to run. Behind me, I heard him checking his files, making sure nothing was disturbed. I made it to the basement and sat on my bed, my entire body shaking. That had been too close. If he'd caught me with those photos, they would have deleted everything and probably called the police. I pulled out my phone and started uploading the photos to a cloud storage account. Then I sent copies to the one person I thought might still help me, Professor Adelaide Morgan, my academic advisor. The next morning, Frank called the police. We have an intruder in our home, he told them. My stepdaughter has been stealing from us and breaking into my personal office. I want her arrested. The police arrived an hour later while I was making breakfast. Carol and Frank stood in the living room, looking concerned and disappointed, perfect victims. Brianna watched from the stairs with her phone out, recording everything for social media. Miss Parker, we need you to come with us, one of the officers said. On what charge? Theft, trespassing, and breaking and entering. Mr. Stevens has filed a complaint. I live here. I work here. How is it trespassing? His office is private property, and you violated that privacy, Frank said. I warned you when you moved in that my office was off limits, unless I specifically asked you to clean it. He was right. That had been rule number 8. Frank's office is private. They handcuffed me right there in the kitchen, with Carol watching and Brianna filming. My phone was still in my apron, and I prayed they wouldn't search me until I got to the station. The ride to the police station felt surreal. This couldn't be happening. I'd found proof of their crimes, and now I was the one being arrested. But as we pulled up to the station, I felt my phone buzz. A text from Professor Morgan. "Received your files. This is explosive. Calling a friend. Hold on." Hope flickered in my chest. I'd gotten the evidence out. Even if Frank and Carol tried to bury it now, someone else had seen it. Someone else knew the truth. When they processed me at the station, they took my phone and put it in a plastic bag with my other belongings. But they didn't check it. Didn't look at what I'd sent. The photos were already out there, beyond their reach. I spent the night in a cell, alone except for the sound of doors slamming and people yelling in other parts of the jail. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel completely hopeless. The trap Carol and Frank had built for me was starting to crack. And when it finally broke, I was going to make sure they fell through. The arraignment hearing was set for Monday morning. I spent the weekend in jail, eating terrible food and trying not to think about what would happen if I got convicted. Breaking and entering could mean years in prison. They led me into the courtroom in handcuffs, wearing an orange jumpsuit. Carol and Frank sat in the front row, dressed perfectly, looking like concerned parents dealing with a troubled daughter. The public defender assigned to my case was a kid fresh out of law school who'd barely looked at my file. "The best we can hope for is a plea deal," he said. "If you plead guilty, maybe we can get the sentence reduced." "I'm not pleading guilty. I didn't do anything wrong." He looked at me like I was crazy. "You were caught in a private office at 1 a.m, going through files that didn't belong to you. That's pretty clearly breaking and entering." The judge called the case. Frank's lawyer, a sharp woman in an expensive suit, laid out the charges. Made me sound like a dangerous criminal who'd violated the family's trust and privacy. My public defender barely put up a defense, just mumbled something about mitigating circumstances and asked for bail. "Bail is set at $20,000, the judge said. I didn't have $20, let alone $20,000. I was going back to jail. But then the courtroom doors opened, and a woman walked in with purpose. Professor Morgan. And she wasn't alone. Behind her was a younger woman with a press badge and a camera. "Your Honor," Professor Morgan said, "I'm Adelaide Morgan, and I have information relevant to this case that I believe you need to hear before proceeding." The judge frowned. "This is highly irregular. Who are you?" "I'm Miss Parker's former academic advisor, and I've recently received evidence that suggests she's the victim of a sophisticated fraud scheme perpetrated by the very people accusing her." Carol stood up. "Your Honor, this woman has no standing in this case." "Sit down," the judge said. Then to Professor Morgan. "What evidence?" Professor Morgan pulled out a folder. "Miss Parker sent me documents 2 nights ago showing forged signatures, bribed notaries, and a pattern of financial crimes committed by Carol Stevens and Frank Stevens. I immediately contacted my colleague, Sarah Brennan, who's an investigative journalist. She's been looking into the Stevens family, and what she's found is deeply troubling." The journalist, Sarah, stepped forward. "Your Honor, I've identified 3 other families who were victimized by the same pattern. Carol Stevens marries widowers with children and assets. She systematically isolates the husband from his children, gains control of finances, and then the husband either dies or becomes completely dependent on her. The children are left with nothing." Frank's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, this is ridiculous. These are baseless accusations being made to distract from Miss Parker's crimes." "Then you won't mind if I examine the evidence," the judge said dryly. "Approach the bench, all of you." For the next hour, the courtroom turned into a different trial entirely. Professor Morgan and Sarah presented the photos I'd taken, along with their own research. Bank records showing Carol's pattern, testimony from other victims, evidence of the bribed notary. Frank's expression got darker and darker. Carol sat frozen, her perfect mask finally cracking. The judge read through everything, his face grave. Finally, he looked up. "Miss Parker, the charges against you are dismissed. Bailiff, remove her restraints." The handcuffs came off, and I stood there, hardly daring to believe it. "Mr. and Mrs. Stevens," the judge continued, "I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Based on what I've seen here, there's probable cause to believe serious crimes have been committed. Bailiff, ensure they don't leave the courthouse. Carol's face went white. Frank immediately started talking, lawyer mode activated, but the judge cut him off. Save it for your own lawyer, Mr. Stevens. You're going to need one. 2 officers escorted Carol and Frank out of the courtroom. As they passed me, Carol looked at me with pure hatred. You ungrateful little witch, she hissed. After everything I did for you, you stole from me. You framed me. You tried to destroy my life. You should have just accepted your place. They led her away, and I stood there, shaking, hardly able to process what had just happened. Professor Morgan hugged me. I'm so sorry it took me this long to help. When I saw those documents, I knew you were telling the truth. Thank you. Thank you for believing me. Sarah introduced herself properly. I'd like to interview you for my article, if you're willing. Your story needs to be told, and there might be other victims out there who need to know they're not alone. Over the next few days, Sarah's article went viral. The Black Widow of Riverside. How one woman systematically defrauded families for decades exposed everything. Carol's previous marriages, the suspicious deaths, the pattern of inheritance theft, Frank's role in covering up the crimes. It was picked up by national news outlets. Other victims came forward. 12 more families who'd been destroyed by Carol and Frank's schemes. The district attorney opened a full investigation. Frank's law firm immediately fired him and started their own internal review. The state bar opened disciplinary proceedings that would likely end in disbarment. A real lawyer contacted me, David Hartford, who specialized in fraud cases. He offered to represent me pro bono after reading Sarah's article. What they did to you was systematic and cruel, he said in our first meeting. We're going to make sure you get every penny back, plus damages, the university called. My suspension was lifted. My scholarships were reinstated. They offered me the chance to return and complete my degree the following semester. The police detective who'd originally dismissed my case called to apologize. We should have dug deeper. I'm sorry we didn't believe you. Brianna, surprisingly, reached out through a mutual acquaintance. She wanted to talk. I almost didn't go, but curiosity won. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. She looked different. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing jeans instead of designer clothes. I testified against them, she said without preamble. Mom and Frank, I told the district attorney everything. Why? Because I finally realized what she did to you. She'd been doing to me my whole life. I thought she loved me, that I was special. But I was just another pawn. She used me to hurt you, and she'd have used me to hurt someone else down the line. I'm in therapy now, trying to figure out who I actually am without her controlling everything. It didn't excuse what she'd done, the cruelty, the videos, the humiliation. But I could see she was genuinely trying to change. I'm sorry, she said, for all of it. I know that's not enough, but I mean it. I appreciate that. We weren't friends. Maybe we never would be. But it was a start towards something that might eventually resemble peace. The trial took 6 months to prepare. David was thorough, building an airtight case with evidence from multiple sources. The photographs I'd taken, testimony from other victims, bank records, everything. Carol and Frank both initially pleaded not guilty, convinced they could talk their way out of it the way they always had. But as the evidence mounted, as victim after victim took the stand, their lawyers finally convinced them that fighting was pointless. They changed their pleas to guilty. The sentencing hearing was held on a cold morning in November. I sat in the courtroom with Professor Morgan on one side and Sarah on the other, watching Carol and Frank stand before the judge. The judge was not sympathetic. She'd read every case file, every victim statement, every piece of evidence showing the decades of manipulation and theft. Mrs. Stevens, you are a predator who systematically targeted vulnerable people for financial gain. You showed no remorse, no conscience, no humanity. Mr. Stevens, as an officer of the court, your betrayal of legal ethics is particularly egregious. You used your position and knowledge to help perpetrate these crimes and cover them up. Carol got 6 years in prison. Frank got 8, plus permanent disbarment. As they led Carol away, she looked at me one last time. No hatred this time. Just emptiness. Like she finally understood that she'd lost everything. I felt no satisfaction in her defeat. Just a deep exhaustion and a strange kind of sadness. She'd been my mother. Or I'd thought she was, for almost 10 years. Finding out she'd only ever seen me as an obstacle to steal from was a wound that wouldn't heal quickly. The civil case took another 3 months. David sued Carol and Frank for the full amount stolen, plus damages for emotional distress, lost wages, and pain and suffering. The house, my father's house, was returned to me. The college fund was restored with interest. All the fake debts were cleared from my name. My credit was repaired. And on top of that, the court ordered them to pay an additional $150,000 in damages. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many memories, both good and bad. The good ones of my father. The bad ones of what Carol had turned it into. With the money, I did 3 things. First, I paid off all my actual debts and created a safety fund for myself. Second, I finished my degree, graduating a year late but with honors. And third, I started a foundation, the Ashlynn Foundation for Financial Fraud Victims. We provided legal assistance, counseling, and financial education to people who'd been victimized by family members or close relationships. We helped them navigate the legal system, connected them with pro bono lawyers, and offered support groups so they didn't have to face it alone. Sarah continued writing about financial fraud, becoming a leading voice in exposing these crimes. We partnered on several awareness campaigns, helping other victims find the courage to come forward. Professor Morgan became the foundation's board advisor. She'd saved my life by believing me when no one else did, and I wanted to honor that by helping others the way she'd helped me. Brianna completed therapy and went back to school. We weren't close, but we texted occasionally. She was trying to build a real life, one not based on her mother's manipulations. I respected that. Tyler, my ex-boyfriend, reached out about a year later with an apology. His parents had seen the news coverage and realized they'd been wrong about me. He wanted to get back together. I declined, not out of anger, but because I'd grown past that relationship. I'd been through fire and come out stronger on the other side. I needed someone who would believe in me even when things got hard, not someone who abandoned me at the first sign of trouble. I did start dating again eventually. A lawyer named Marcus, who volunteered with the foundation. He'd been through his own family trauma and understood the complexities of healing from betrayal. It was slow and careful, but it was real. On the 1-year anniversary of Carol's sentencing, I held the foundation's first scholarship awards ceremony. We gave 25 scholarships to young people who'd been victimized by financial fraud, helping them complete their education. As I handed the award to a 19-year-old girl whose stepfather had stolen her trust fund, I saw my own past reflected in her eyes. The fear, the anger, the determination to not let it define her. "You're going to be okay," I told her. "It doesn't feel like it now, but you will. You're stronger than what happened to you." She hugged me, crying, and I remembered being in that exact place. Broken and desperate and terrified. But I'd made it through. And now I could help others do the same. That night I sat in my apartment, a nice place this time, safe and comfortable, and thought about everything that had happened. Carol had tried to destroy me. She'd stolen my money, my reputation, my future. She'd humiliated me, isolated me, and nearly broken me completely. But she'd failed. Not because I was special or lucky or had some secret strength, but because I'd refused to stay down. I'd fought back, even when the odds were impossible, even when everyone told me to give up. My father used to say that the measure of a person isn't what happens to them, but how they respond to what happens. Carol happened to me. She was the worst thing that could have happened at that point in my life. But my response, fighting back, finding the evidence, refusing to be silenced, that defined who I became. Not her victim, but a survivor, and eventually, someone who could help other survivors find their own strength. The life lesson I learned wasn't simple or easy. It was this: family isn't just blood. Family is the people who support you, believe in you, and stand by you when times are hardest. Professor Morgan was more family to me than Carol ever was. Sarah, David, even Brianna in her own way were the family I chose. And when someone shows you who they really are, when they reveal themselves to be cruel and manipulative and willing to destroy you for their own gain, believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't hope they'll change. Protect yourself. Document everything. And when the time is right, fight back with everything you have. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our greatest triumphs. Not because the pain was worth it. Nothing could make that pain worth it. But because we choose to rise anyway. We choose to take what tried to break us and forge it into something that makes us stronger. Carol tried to break me. She gave it everything she had. And for a while she almost succeeded. But in the end, I won. Not just in court, though that mattered. But I won in the way that really counted. I kept my integrity, my compassion, my hope for something better. I turned my worst experience into a way to help others. I chose to be someone who builds people up instead of tearing them down. That's the victory Carol could never understand and could never take away. I opened my laptop and started working on the next round of scholarship applications. There were hundreds of them, each one telling a story of betrayal and resilience, each one a person who needed help getting back on their feet. I couldn't save everyone. I couldn't fix all the injustice in the world. But I could help these people, one at a time. The way I'd been helped, and that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's going through something similar right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and realize they're not alone in their struggles. And if you want to hear more stories about overcoming impossible odds and finding strength in the darkest times, subscribe to this channel. There are so many stories that need to be told, so many people who need to know that survival is possible. Finally, share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's dealing with family betrayal, financial fraud, or any situation where they feel trapped and helpless. Let them know that there's always a way forward, even when you can't see it yet. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope that wherever you are in your own journey, you find the strength to keep fighting for yourself. You deserve justice. You deserve peace. You deserve to win. Stay strong. Stay hopeful. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you're not worth fighting for.